Scott, thank you so much for being with us this morning. We'll see you back in a couple of weeks.
Thank you for having me.
The Pennsylvania School Safety Hour recently had the opportunity to attend the Pennsylvania Association of School Resource Officers annual conference. The event was attended by school resource officers, mental health professionals, school administrators, and other school safety stakeholders. It was a packed house and tough to hear at times, but here's what they had to say about the role of the SRO.
My name is Bill Oslick. I'm a member of the PASRO board, but also the Region 3 director for NASRA, the National Association of School Resource Officers. PASRO was started 6 years ago. It evolved as a state partner for NASRA to bring school-related policing training here to Pennsylvania. And it is important because we know that continuing education is important for us as professionals to understand how to handle certain situations in schools, but to further develop networking amongst not only our other SROs, but also the educators and administrators that attend our conference.
My name is Jenna Withroyd, and I am with the Central Intermediate Unit 10. I'm actually the Director of Adult Education and Project Development. What that encompasses is Safety Coordinator. This is my first PASRO conference. It came highly recommended by Aaron Skirvin, who sits on our PASRO board. And I have to say it has not disappointed so far. I appreciate the networking, meeting the vendors, talking to SROs, talking to other administrators in this field, and I have found it extremely beneficial.
The benefits of having an SRO officer in your school is that they interact with the kids, and they get the kids then get a better image of what law enforcement is there for. They help the kids maybe they buy their lunch one day, maybe they get them home one day, maybe they don't have a ride home because the parent didn't pick them up. I'm not sure that you can put an actual dollar amount on a resource officer. They do so much that we just can't measure just by having them there in your facility, other than the added layer of protection.
So I worked about 15 years in patrol, first in the city of Newcastle, so did a lot of stuff there. I've been in SWAT for about 15 years. I still do that now. And then moved into the school district about, like I said, 4 to 5 years ago. And it was a huge transition with dealing with just criminals every day and then dealing with children. Because even when they mess up, they're still kids. And like the biggest takeaway that I've learned, especially from speakers, is the number one reason we're there is to build that relationship with the students and for them to then trust us and trust police in general. Obviously we're also there for security reasons and to make any arrests that need to be made, but it's really all about the kids and building that relationship.
I walked into that role in 2018 as a detective for 18 years and a juvenile detective with what I thought was a pretty good understanding of the role of the SRO, and it was completely shattered once I got in there. It is completely different than what I thought. The relationships that I have created in the school with staff, the admin, and more importantly with the students is absolutely unbelievable each and every year. And it's really interesting. I've been in the school now for 7 years, and my role has changed. It has evolved. Obviously, it's changed with societal needs, but there's so much that the SRO is now involved in the school. It's just an unbelievable process. One of that is the parent involvement and the explanation to the parents of my role in the school. There's been a lot of miscommunication about SROs arresting in the school. I've been in the school for 7 years in a school that has over 2,400 students, and I've never arrested one student. That is not my role. Now, granted, I'm a uniformed police officer in the school, but I'm also a informal mentor, an educator, and I've found those roles to be really rewarding, where I've been invited as a guest to come into classrooms for health class, for sexual assault and consent, driver's ed, getting pulled over and just going through the simple steps of what happens when a new driver gets pulled over for students. So it's really interesting. I look at myself in the school as a conduit for so many different things. For the parents to get answers and questions to certain things going on, for other law enforcement agencies, and for other agencies in the county. Children and youth services, mental health services. the uptick in mental health within the schools is so great, and I think we can really see its manifestation through the Safe to Say app that we have. And my role doesn't stop when I leave school at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm dealing with the Safe to Say at 10 o'clock at night or 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'm able to plug those resources in to get the services needed for that. Or there's an incident that takes place in the middle of the night, I'm there to let the admin know first thing in the morning while that certain student's not going to be there, and to give and provide the resources either through our guidance and mental health resources that we have. It's a very rewarding job, and it comes with a lot of stress. Like I've told many people before, I get up in the morning and I put my uniform on and I get my game face on, and I realize I'm walking into that school and I am that line of defense in case there's ever an active threat. That's a huge responsibility. Now, with that being said, you're doing all those other roles of the SRO during the day, mentoring, talking with parents, meeting with students. But if something happens, you have to be able to act and react to what's going on. We have all kinds of things in place in our school and a lot of other schools that are deterrents, with locked doors and first line security. But really, when it comes down to it, having an armed police officer that's properly trained in the school can pay dividends. And the problem is sometimes is we can't see what our impact is. You can't measure that impact. And I think that's really important to understand. It's like when I was on patrol back in the day and I'm driving through business parks at night, I may have deterred a burglar. I never know that. Well, me being in the school, having my marked patrol unit outside, me being in uniform each and every day, that may be the deterrent effect to cause somebody to think that it's not a good idea. I'm not going to do that. So sometimes it's really immeasurable what we do. Unfortunately, there's some circumstances where, there's some bad press or something happens with an SRO in a school, and then it's like the broad brush gets painted for everyone. But day in and day out, the dedication that each officer has to go into that school, I think resonates into this conference, because it's like, give me more. We need to continue to better ourselves. You can never stop doing that.
Joining us now is Dr. Beth Sanborn, President of the Pennsylvania Association of School Resource Officers, also known as PASRO. Beth is a retired police officer, speaker, youth advocate, and founder of Hidden High in Hammered LLC. Beth, welcome. There's a lot to the role of a school resource officer. Can you tell us about that?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me here today. My passion is talking about school-based policing and the role of the school resource officers. If you're unfamiliar with the role of SROs, we serve 3 essential functions in no particular order. We're uniformed law enforcement officers, and that uniform can vary. We're also informal counselors and mentors, and we're also public safety educators. And the great part of this model, this triad as we call it, is that you can focus as much or as little time on any one of those 3 prongs as is needed by your school district and your community. So we, as law enforcement officers, get the luxury of time with our kids. We get to see them over the course of 180 school days, year after year, day in and day out.
Beth, in your book, The Missing Piece, you say you most strongly identify with the informal role of a counselor/mentor as a school resource officer. Can you describe for us what that really means?
Well, I got into policing, 26 years ago because I wanted to help people. But I learned that that wasn't necessarily what policing was all about. And it wasn't until I assumed the role of school resource officer that I realized that when you work with kids, you have the ability to positively impact a life with every single interaction. You really can make a difference through those repeated positive interactions. But it's dangerous because it's a double-edged sword. Not only do you have the ability to make a positive impact, you also have the potential to have a negative impact. Because not everyone feels safe and secure when they're around a uniformed police officer. Some people feel uncomfortable and some feel scared. So what we as school resource officers train in and what we understand is that your language and your tone and your body language and even just the way you carry yourself, your nonverbal language has to be figuratively louder than the noise that's created by a police uniform so that you can build those relationships and establish that rapport to establish a long-term, trusting, positive relationship.
That makes so much sense. It's almost like the uniform creates a barrier.
It can.
Yeah.
It can. While it makes some people feel safe and secure, there's also a sense of unease based on what your personal interactions have been.
Right.
Beth, you say in your book, working formally under the police department and informally under the school can be tricky. Why is that?
Absolutely. So a school resource officer does have a federal definition. And at the time when I served as school resource officer, I was a sworn police officer working and hired by my jurisdiction to work in collaboration with the school district. So my hierarchy was that I reported to the police department. I was a guest inside the schoolhouse. So I had to make sure that my principals, my staff, my administrative team, the students and parents were all pleased with the service that I delivered, but I still reported to my police department.
So communication was very important.
Absolutely. Oftentimes you had to have those open-handed conversations where you had to explain the roles of what it is that we can do, and then more importantly, what we can't do. And then even more so, more complicated is even if you can do something, should you do it?
Beth, one area that you mentioned as being paramount is the soft skills training, like communication and listening skills. Can you talk to us a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. Anytime there's any issues with the police in the community, what's the first outcry that you hear? Police officers need more training. Well, the school resource officer curriculum as set forth by NASRO, the National Association of School Resource Officers, has the gold standard of school-based policing as has been defined by the government. And in that curriculum and in that criteria, we learn about those soft skills, how to apply and learn about the why behind the behavior. It isn't just looking at juvenile behaviors, but what is causing it, and how can we be a part of the team that helps to turn these misbehaviors into learning experiences so that the behavior isn't repeated again in the future. We work together and collaboratively with the school administrative team to help be those bumpers to help our kids achieve their definition of success.
From your perspective, how can parents be an ally to the SRO?
Absolutely. It's knowing who the various stakeholders are who are involved in your kids. I'll ask this question. Does anyone act differently around their spouse than they do their best friend, or maybe around their boss than they do their children? And it's not because we have different personalities. It's just that's the facet of our personality that we choose to show in that moment. And our kids are no different. They act one way around their friends than they do with their teachers, than they do with their parents, than they do when they're by themselves. And we as school resource officers who get to spend that time with our kids, who get to experience them when we're all in this period of emotional neutrality, we're all on our home turf in school, we're all sharing that same environment, we get to see a facet of kids' personalities that their parents may not often see. So if we can share that information, we can truly get a clear picture of a student's real identity.
Beth, thank you so much. We look forward to learning more about the school resource officer in the upcoming weeks and months to come.
Thank you so much.
Coming up.